My husband thought hurting me in front of family meant no consequences, but he forgot the one person in the room who knew all his secrets. We were at his parents' house for Thanksgiving. The whole family gathered around the table, turkey and stuffing and that fake warmth everyone puts on for the holidays. I'd spent 3 days preparing dishes from scratch because his mother had very specific expectations about what a proper wife should bring. Gordon waited until everyone was seated, until all eyes were on us. That's when he decided to humiliate me. "You know what my wife did last week?" he said loudly, cutting through the dinner conversation. "She spent $200 at Target." "On what?" "I have no idea. Probably more junk we don't need." Everyone laughed nervously. His father chuckled and said something about women and shopping. His mother gave me that look, the one that said I was confirming every low opinion she'd already formed. I felt my face burn. The $200 was for groceries and household supplies. Gordon knew that. He'd eaten the food I bought, used the toilet paper and dish soap. But facts didn't matter. The performance did. See, Gordon had been doing this for months. Small digs in public, comments about my weight, my cooking, my career, always delivered with a smile, always in front of an audience, always designed to make me look foolish while he looked like the patient, long-suffering husband. I'd stopped defending myself because that only made it worse. He'd say I was too sensitive, can't even take a joke. His family would nod sympathetically at him, the reasonable one married to the dramatic woman who couldn't handle a little teasing. But tonight felt different. Tonight he'd crossed a line I hadn't known existed until he stepped over it. His brother was there, quiet, watchful Cal who'd always been kind to me, who'd actually listened when I talked instead of waiting for his turn to speak. Cal worked as a forensic accountant, the kind of person who noticed patterns, who documented irregularities, who knew how money moved and where it hid. Gordon kept going. "My wife can't even balance a checkbook. I have to monitor every purchase or she'd bankrupt us." More laughter. His mother patted his hand. "You're so patient with her, sweetie." That's when I saw it. The slight tightening around Cal's eyes. The way he set down his fork very carefully. Because Cal knew something the rest of the family didn't. 3 months ago, I'd gone to him privately, shown him the credit card statements I'd found, the cash withdrawals Gordon made every Friday, the hotel charges, the payments to an apartment I'd never heard of. Cal had gone very still as he reviewed them. Then he'd said quietly, "Let me look into this. Don't say anything yet." Now sitting at this Thanksgiving table while Gordon painted me as an incompetent fool, Cal cleared his throat. "Actually, Gordon, speaking of finances, I've been meaning to ask you about something." The table went quiet. Gordon's smile flickered. "What's that?" Cal pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. "That LLC you set up last year. The one funneling money from your joint accounts. What was that for again?" The color drained from Gordon's face. His mother frowned. "What LLC?" Cal's voice stayed pleasant. "The one with monthly transfers of $3,000 to $5,000. I'm just curious about the business purpose." Gordon tried to laugh it off. It's complicated." But Cal wasn't done. "I also understand about the second phone. The apartment downtown. The woman whose name appears on several shared expenses. Her name's Natasha. She's 26, works at Gordon's office." The silence that followed was deafening. His mother went white. His father stood up so fast his chair fell over. Gordon turned to me, desperate. "This is ridiculous. You're going to believe him over me?" I smiled. "Actually, I already knew. I hired Cal to investigate you 11 weeks ago. We have bank statements, photographs, text messages, everything." What happened next was chaos. But Cal pulled me aside into the kitchen. He handed me a folder. "This is everything. Ready for your lawyer." Gordon's been hiding assets, moving money, setting up for a divorce where he'd leave you with nothing. Gordon's father was screaming now. His voice carried through the entire house. "How dare you do this to our family? How dare you embarrass us like this?" But he wasn't yelling at Gordon. He was yelling at me. Because somehow, in their twisted logic, I was the problem. Not the cheating husband, not the liar. Me, for exposing it. His mother stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "You've ruined Thanksgiving. You've ruined everything. This is exactly what we warned Gordon about when he married you. You're vindictive and manipulative, and you've turned his own brother against him." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized something I should have understood years ago. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew her son was capable of this. She'd probably known his whole life. The kind of mother who makes excuses, who enables, who protects her child from consequences no matter who gets hurt in the process. Cal stepped forward. "Mom, he's been stealing from his wife, setting up secret accounts, planning to leave her with nothing while he runs off with another woman. How is any of that her fault?" But Gordon's mother just shook her head. "You don't understand. Marriage is hard. People make mistakes." She could have handled this privately instead of destroying our family gathering. I wanted to laugh, or scream, maybe both, because privacy was exactly what Gordon had counted on. The silence, the shame, the idea that I'd be too humiliated to tell anyone, that I'd swallow my pain to keep up appearances. Gordon's sister Diane spoke up from the dining room. I think we should hear her side. She'd always been the reasonable one. The middle child who tried to keep peace but also couldn't ignore obvious injustice. Gordon shot her a look. "There's no side to hear. Cal's making things up. He's always been jealous of me." Cal pulled out his phone again. "Want me to show everyone the photos? The ones from the private investigator? There's some particularly interesting shots from last Tuesday at the Riverside Hotel." Gordon lunged at him. The brothers crashed into the kitchen counter, glasses shattering. Gordon's father tried to separate them while his mother screamed. I stood there watching my marriage implode in real time, watching a family fracture along fault lines that had probably existed for decades. Diane grabbed my arm. "Come on, let's get you out of here." She led me through the chaos, past the destroyed Thanksgiving dinner, out to the driveway. Her husband followed, carrying my coat and purse. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded, though I wasn't sure that was true. My hands were shaking. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. But underneath all that was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. Diane hugged me. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea Gordon was capable of this. None of us did." That wasn't quite true. Cal had suspected. He'd told me later that Gordon had always been the golden child who never faced real consequences. Their parents had cleaned up his messes since childhood. The fights he'd started. The girls he'd mistreated. The money he'd borrowed and never returned. They'd always found a way to excuse him, to blame others, to pretend he was just misunderstood. The front door burst open. Gordon stormed out, Cal right behind him. "You're done," Gordon shouted at me. "You hear me? Done. I'll make sure you don't get a penny. I'll tell everyone you're crazy, unstable. I'll destroy you." Cal's voice cut through the night air. "Actually, you won't. Because I've already filed copies of everything with 3 different lawyers. If anything happens to her, if she has any mysterious accidents or sudden financial troubles, if she ends up smeared in any way, those documents become public record. Every single detail of what you've done." Gordon froze. "You wouldn't. Try me," Cal said. "I've protected you my whole life, covered for you, made excuses. I'm done. I'm choosing her side now, the side of truth." I watched something crumble in Gordon's face. Maybe the realization that he'd finally pushed too far, that his charm and manipulation had limits, that there were people who wouldn't be moved by his performance. His father appeared in the doorway. "Get back in this house, both of you. We're going to settle this as a family." But Cal shook his head. "No, Dad. This isn't a family meeting situation. This is a legal matter. Gordon committed fraud. He stole from his wife. He violated their marriage contract. There's nothing to discuss." "I'll cut you off," Gordon's father threatened. "Both of you. Not another dime of family money." Cal shrugged. "Good. I've never wanted your money anyway. It always came with too many strings attached." Diane stepped forward. "If you cut Cal off, you cut me off too. I'm not standing by while you punish the only person in this family with integrity." The look on Gordon's father's face was something I'll never forget. Pure shock that his children were rebelling, that his authority was being questioned. He'd built his whole life on control, on keeping everyone in line through money and threats and the promise of inheritance. But some things mattered more than money. Diane's husband cleared his throat. "We should probably mention that we've been documenting the family dynamics for a while now, for our own protection. The emotional abuse, the manipulation, the way certain people in this family are treated. If this goes to court, we're prepared to testify." That's when Gordon's mother started crying in earnest. "You're all turning against us. Your own parents. After everything we've done for you." Diane's voice stayed calm. "Everything you've done for us came with conditions. We had to think like you, act like you, excuse the inexcusable. That's not love. That's control." I felt tears on my own cheeks now. Not from sadness exactly. From the overwhelming realization that I wasn't alone, that people saw what was happening and chose to stand with me instead of staying silent. Gordon made one last attempt. He turned to me, his voice suddenly soft. "Please, we can work this out. Go to counseling. Start over. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." I looked at the man I'd married 6 years ago, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd stood at an altar and vowed to be faithful, who'd held me on our wedding night and whispered that he'd never hurt me. 6 years of slow erosion, of tiny cuts that bled my confidence away, of public humiliation disguised as jokes, of making me doubt my own reality. And now, caught red-handed, he wanted me to believe he'd change. "No," I said quietly. "We're done." His face hardened. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll regret staying more." Cal drove me to a hotel that night, not the one Gordon had been using for his affair, a different one across town. He helped me check in, made sure I had everything I needed, and promised to bring me my things from the house the next day. Before he left, he handed me a card. "My lawyer friend. She specializes in these cases. Call her tomorrow. She's expecting to hear from you." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Why risk everything for me?" "Because someone should have done it years ago," he said. "I watched Gordon treat you like garbage. I watched our parents enable it. I told myself it wasn't my business, that you were strong enough to handle it. But tonight, watching him humiliate you in front of everyone, I realized I'd been complicit through my silence." He left. I sat alone in that hotel room, surrounded by silence for the first time in years. No Gordon telling me I'd done something wrong, no background noise of his gaming or sports or phone calls, just quiet. I called my mom, told her everything. She cried, said she'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to pry. She'd be on the first flight out tomorrow. Dad, too. They'd help me through this. Then I opened the folder Cal had given me, page after page of documentation. The LLC registered under a false name, the apartment lease, bank statements showing systematic theft of my portion of our savings, credit cards I'd never seen, loans taken out in both our names that I'd never authorized. Gordon hadn't just been unfaithful, he'd been planning his exit strategy for over a year, slowly moving money, establishing separate accounts, making sure that when he finally left, he'd be set and I'd be destroyed. The next morning, I called Cal's lawyer friend. Her name was Veronica. She reviewed everything I had, then asked me to come to her office. When I arrived, she had another person with her, a private investigator named Fitz who'd been tracking Gordon for months at Cal's request. "We have more than enough," Veronica said. "The question is how you want to proceed. We can go aggressive or we can go quiet. Aggressive means I file for fraud, theft, and every other legal violation we can prove. The case becomes public record. Gordon's reputation gets destroyed. His job probably finds out. It'll be ugly, but thorough. And quiet?" I asked. "Quiet means we leverage all of this in divorce negotiations. We show him what we have. We make it clear that fighting us means everything goes public. Most men like Gordon choose to settle quickly when faced with exposure. You'd get a favorable divorce, financial restitution, and he slinks away with whatever dignity we allow him to keep." I thought about it. About public vindication versus private resolution. About revenge versus moving on. I wanted him to suffer the way he'd made me suffer. Wanted everyone to see who he really was behind the charming mask. But more than that, I wanted to be free. I wanted this chapter closed so I could start the next one. "Let's go quiet," I said, with one condition. "If he violates the agreement in any way, if he tries to smear me or cause problems or withhold what he owes, then we go nuclear. Everything becomes public." Veronica smiled. "I can work with that." The papers were served 2 days later. Gordon called me 18 times. Left voicemails that progressed from anger to bargaining to threats. I didn't answer. My lawyer handled everything. He tried to show up at my hotel. Security turned him away. He sent flowers with an apology card. I refused delivery. He texted that he'd made a terrible mistake, that Natasha meant nothing, that he wanted me back. Veronica shut that down with a cease and desist. Any further contact would be considered harassment and would trigger the public filing of all evidence. Gordon's parents hired their own lawyer, tried to argue that Cal had stolen privileged financial information, that the evidence was inadmissible, that I was the one who damaged the family. Veronica demolished those arguments one by one. Cal had every legal right to review documents his brother had shared with him. Gordon had voluntarily provided the information during a business consultation. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was illegal. The settlement negotiations took 3 weeks. Gordon fought on principle at first. His lawyer kept insisting they'd win in court. But Veronica was patient. She'd send over another piece of evidence. Another detail Gordon thought was hidden. Another witness statement. His lawyer finally called to discuss terms. Gordon would return every penny he'd taken plus interest. He'd give me the house. He'd keep his 401k, but I'd keep mine plus an additional settlement for pain and suffering. He'd pay my legal fees. And in exchange, everything stayed private. I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning. Gordon wasn't there. He'd sent his lawyer to represent him. Veronica said that was normal in contentious cases. The parties rarely wanted to face each other. But I wanted to face him. One more time. I wanted him to see that I'd survived, that his worst hadn't destroyed me. So I waited outside the lawyer's office. Sure enough, Gordon showed up 30 minutes after I'd left. I watched him from my car. He looked terrible. Thinner. Older. Defeated in a way I'd never seen before. He saw me. Our eyes met across the parking lot. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked toward my car. I rolled down the window but kept the engine running. "Ready to leave if I needed to." "You got what you wanted," he said. "Destroyed me. Turned my family against me. Took everything." "I got what I deserved," I corrected. "You took everything first. I just got it back." His jaw tightened. "I made mistakes. But you didn't have to burn my whole life down. You burned it down yourself," I said. "I just refused to get caught in the fire." He stared at me. I saw something flicker in his expression. Maybe regret. Maybe just anger at being caught. "You've changed," he said finally. "You never used to be this cold." "I learned from the best," I replied. Then I drove away. My parents helped me move back into the house. It felt strange being there without Gordon. Every room held memories. Some good, mostly bad. My dad suggested selling it and starting fresh somewhere else. But I wasn't ready to give up the home I'd built just because Gordon had tainted it. Instead, I redecorated. Painted the walls colors Gordon had hated. Bought new furniture. Turned his gaming room into a home office for myself. I reclaimed every inch of space he'd occupied. Cal came by often. We'd have coffee and talk about everything except Gordon. He told me about his work, his hobbies, his own messy divorce 3 years earlier. I told him about the nursing program I was considering. How I'd always wanted to go back to school, but Gordon had discouraged it. Said we couldn't afford it. Now I knew we could afford it just fine. He'd just been spending the money elsewhere. Diane and her husband visited too. She apologized repeatedly for not seeing the signs sooner, for not speaking up during family dinners when Gordon made his cutting remarks. I assured her it wasn't her fault. Abuse works by isolating the victim, making them feel like maybe they're overreacting. Maybe everyone else sees it differently. Maybe they're the problem. Gordon's parents never reached out. Not to apologize. Not to check if I was okay. Their silence spoke volumes. In their world, I'd committed the unforgivable sin of exposing their son. The truth was less important than the appearance of family unity. But Cal's defection had cost them. Diane stopped attending family events. Other relatives started asking questions. Cousins who'd witnessed the Thanksgiving explosion wanted answers. The careful facade his parents had maintained for decades began to crack. I heard through Cal that Gordon had moved in with Natasha temporarily. That relationship imploded within a month. Apparently, she'd been under the impression Gordon was wealthy and single. Learning he was married and facing financial ruin from the divorce changed her interest level dramatically. Gordon tried dating other women, but word spread in our social circle. The mutual friends we'd had mostly sided with me once they learned the full story. The ones who didn't weren't really friends anyway. They were Gordon's audience. People who enjoyed his performances and didn't care who got hurt. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd ended up in that situation. What signs I'd missed. What patterns I needed to break. My therapist was kind and patient. She explained concepts like gaslighting, financial abuse, and coercive control. Terms I'd heard but never applied to my own life. The first few sessions, I cried a lot. Grieving not the man Gordon actually was, but the man I'd thought he was. The relationship I'd believed we had. The future I'd imagined. All of it had been an illusion. A performance he'd maintained until maintaining it no longer served him. But somewhere around session 8 or 9, the tears stopped. I started feeling angry instead. Good, healthy anger at being manipulated. At having years of my life stolen. At being made to doubt my own worth and sanity. My therapist nodded approvingly. Anger means you're healing. You're no longer blaming yourself. You're recognizing that what happened to you was wrong. I channeled that anger into action. Enrolled in nursing school. Threw myself into studying. I'd worked as a medical receptionist for years, but always wanted to do more. Gordon had discouraged it. Too expensive. Too time-consuming. Too hard at your age. All lies designed to keep me dependent and small. Turns out I was excellent at nursing. Top of my class in anatomy. Praised by instructors for my clinical skills. I discovered I had a gift for making patients feel heard and cared for. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to be dismissed and ignored. 8 months after the divorce, I ran into Gordon at a grocery store. He was alone, looking tired, pushing a cart with frozen dinners and beer. He saw me and froze. I considered walking away, avoiding the confrontation, but I was done avoiding things. "How are you?" I asked, genuinely curious. He shrugged. "Getting by, working a lot. Natasha and I didn't work out." "I'd heard," I said. "I'm sorry about that." He looked surprised. "Are you? Sorry?" I thought about it. "Not sorry your relationship failed, but sorry you're miserable. I never wanted you to suffer. I just wanted you to stop making me suffer. That's more grace than I deserve," he admitted. "I've been thinking a lot about what I did. To you. To us. I don't think I understood how bad it was until it was over. Do you understand now?" I asked. He met my eyes. "I'm starting to. Therapy helps. Court-ordered anger management. It's been humbling." "Good," I said. "Humility looks better on you than arrogance ever did." We talked for a few more minutes. Awkward small talk about weather and work. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Are you happy?" I smiled. "Getting there. I'm in nursing school. Top of my class. Making new friends. Figuring out who I am without someone telling me who to be. So yeah, I'm happier than I've been in years." Something crossed his face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. "I'm glad. You deserve that. I know I destroyed what we had, but I'm glad you're building something better." We parted ways. I watched him walk to his car, shoulders slumped, the swagger gone. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part just felt sad. Sad for all the wasted years. For the people we'd both been when we met. For the possibility that had existed before he'd chosen to slowly poison it. But mostly I felt grateful. Grateful for Cal's courage. For Diane's support. For the lawyer who'd fought for me. For the therapist helping me understand myself. For the second chance I'd been given to build a life on my own terms. I graduated from nursing school 2 years after the divorce. My parents flew in for the ceremony. Cal and Diane came too. They'd become real family to me. The kind who show up not out of obligation but out of genuine care. At the celebration dinner afterward, Cal raised his glass. To new beginnings. To the strength it takes to walk away from what's destroying you. And to the people who have the courage to stand up when it matters. We all drank to that. I got my first job at a pediatric hospital. The work was hard but fulfilling in ways I'd never experienced. I was helping families through the worst moments of their lives, using my own pain to develop empathy and strength. One afternoon, about 6 months into the job, I was sitting with a mother whose daughter was undergoing chemotherapy. The woman was exhausted, frightened, trying to hold everything together. She apologized for crying, for being emotional, for not being stronger. I took her hand. "You don't have to apologize. You don't have to be anything except exactly what you are right now. What you're feeling is valid. Your struggle is real, and you're doing better than you think." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you. I needed to hear that. Sometimes I feel so alone in this." "You're not alone, I promised. I'm here. We're all here, and we'll get through this together." Later that night, driving home, I thought about that conversation, about how far I'd come from the woman who'd sat at that Thanksgiving table 3 years earlier, the woman who'd been too afraid to defend herself, too trained to accept mistreatment as normal. I'd found my voice, found my strength, found the person I was meant to be when no one was trying to diminish me. My phone rang. Cal. He called every Thursday evening. Our weekly check-in had become a tradition. "Hey," I answered. "How was your week?" "Busy." "Good. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. Mom called. She wants to arrange a family dinner." I laughed. "That's not happening." "I know." I told her no, but she's insisting, says enough time has passed, that we need to forgive and move forward. That family is important. Family is important, I agreed. That's why I'm having dinner with people who actually care about me. You and Diane. Maybe Veronica if she's free. My real family. Cal was quiet for a moment. You know what? I'm stealing that line. Because you're right. Blood doesn't make family. Love and respect do. We talked for another hour. About his work, about my job, about the lives we were building. Lives that were honest and healthy and free from the toxicity we'd both escaped. Before we hung up, Cal said something that stuck with me. I'm proud of you, for surviving, for thriving, for becoming the kind of person others look to for strength. I'm proud of us both, I replied. We chose truth over comfort. That's harder than people realize. After we said goodbye, I sat in my car outside my house. My house. The one I'd fought for and won. The one that represented everything I'd reclaimed. I thought about Gordon, wondered if he'd learned anything, if he'd changed, if he was treating whatever new woman he'd found with the respect he'd never shown me. I hoped so. Not for his sake, but for hers. Mostly, though, I thought about the woman I'd been, the one who'd accepted crumbs and called it love, who'd made herself smaller to fit Gordon's idea of who she should be, who'd silenced her own voice to avoid conflict. She was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who wouldn't settle for anything less than genuine respect and care. I got out of my car and walked to my front door. The porch light glowed warm and welcoming. Inside, my home waited. Not perfect, not magazine-ready, but mine. Authentically, completely mine. And that was worth more than any marriage built on lies. The next few years unfolded quietly. No drama, no crisis, just steady growth and healing. I got promoted at work, took on more responsibilities, mentored new nurses, built a reputation as someone who could handle difficult cases with grace and competence. I dated occasionally, nothing serious. Men who were kind and interesting, but didn't spark that deep connection I was looking for. And that was okay. I'd learned that being alone was infinitely better than being with someone who diminished me. Cal got remarried. A wonderful woman named Brittany who worked in environmental law. She was everything his first wife hadn't been. Supportive, genuine, strong in her own right. Their wedding was small and beautiful. Diane and I stood beside them as witnesses. During the reception, Brittany pulled me aside. Cal told me what you went through, how you both escaped that toxic family system. I just want you to know how much I admire your courage. Not many people can walk away from their whole life and rebuild from scratch. Thank you, I said. But I had help. Without Cal and Diane, I don't know if I would have found the strength. She smiled. That's what makes it even more impressive. You let people help you. That takes courage too. I thought about that a lot after the wedding, about how we're taught to be independent and self-sufficient, to handle everything alone. But real strength isn't refusing help. It's recognizing when you need it and accepting it with gratitude. Gordon remarried too. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances. Her name was Felicity. She was younger, successful, independent. From the outside, they looked happy. I hoped they were. I hoped Gordon had actually learned from our disaster, had grown into someone capable of real partnership. But I also knew that wasn't my concern anymore. His life, his choices, his consequences. I'd let go of the anger, mostly let go of the pain. What remained was just memory, a cautionary tale I could look back on and learn from without it destroying me. On the 5-year anniversary of that Thanksgiving dinner, I took myself out to a nice restaurant, ordered exactly what I wanted without worrying about anyone else's preferences, drank good wine, enjoyed my own company. The waiter brought dessert, chocolate cake with a single candle. Compliments of the house, he said. We heard you're celebrating something special. I smiled. I am. 5 years of freedom. He looked confused but smiled back. Well, congratulations. I blew out the candle and made a wish. Not for a relationship, or money, or success. Just for continued peace, continued growth, continued ability to recognize my own worth. That night, I wrote in the journal my therapist had encouraged me to keep. Reflected on how far I'd come. The person I'd been 5 years ago wouldn't recognize the person I was now. And that was the whole point. I'd shed the skin of who I'd been forced to become, grown into who I was always meant to be. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days, moments of loneliness, times when I wondered if I'd ever find someone to build a life with. But even on those days, I never regretted leaving. Never wished I'd stayed. The worst day free was better than the best day trapped. My mom called the next morning. How was your anniversary dinner? She asked. I told her about my personal tradition of celebrating my escape. Perfect, I said. Exactly what I needed. Dad and I are so proud of you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Watching you survive and thrive has been the greatest gift. We worried so much during those years with Gordon. Knew something was wrong but didn't know how to help. You helped by being there when I needed you, I assured her. By not judging. By supporting my choices even when they were scary. We talked for an hour. About everything and nothing. Just the comfortable conversation of people who love each other without conditions or expectations. When we hung up, I felt full, grateful, lucky. Work that week was particularly challenging. We had a teenage patient, Zara, who'd been in a severe car accident. Her parents were devastated, fighting with each other, taking their stress out on the staff. I recognized the pattern, the way trauma can fracture relationships, how people in crisis often hurt the ones trying to help them. I spent extra time with them, listened to their fears, validated their feelings, helped them understand that fighting each other wouldn't help their daughter. They needed to be united. to support each other through this nightmare. By the end of the week, they'd shifted, started holding hands again, speaking kindly, working as a team. Zara's father pulled me aside. Thank you for everything, for caring when we were at our worst. That's my job, I said. But more than that, I understand. I know what it's like to feel alone in your pain, to have people who should support you make things worse. I won't let that happen to you here. He hugged me. A brief, grateful embrace. We need more people like you in the world. I thought about that comment for days. About how our pain can become our purpose. How surviving something terrible gives us unique insight to help others through similar struggles. My marriage to Gordon had nearly destroyed me, but surviving it had made me exactly the kind of nurse these families needed. That's when I decided to go back to school, to get my master's degree in family counseling. I wanted to work specifically with people escaping abusive relationships, to use my experience to help others recognize the patterns I'd missed for too long. Cal was thrilled when I told him. That's perfect for you. You've always been able to see through people's facades, to recognize when something's wrong even when everyone else is buying the performance. Diane agreed. She'd started volunteering with a domestic violence shelter, said they desperately needed trained counselors who understood the complexity of leaving, who wouldn't judge victims for staying too long or going back, who knew that escape was a process, not a single decision. I started my master's program that fall. The coursework was intense but fascinating, learning the psychology behind abuse, the tactics manipulators use, the reasons victims stay. Every lecture felt personal, like finally understanding a language I'd been speaking without knowing the vocabulary. One of my professors was a woman named Dr. Helena Vance. She'd escaped her own abusive marriage 20 years earlier and dedicated her career to helping others. She saw something in me during the first week of classes. After a lecture on coercive control, she asked me to stay behind. You have the look, she said, like someone who's lived this, not just studied it. I nodded. Married for 6 years to someone who systematically destroyed my sense of self. Took me too long to leave, even longer to understand what had happened to me. But you did leave, she said, and now you're here. That's rare. Most people who escape just want to forget. Move on. Not many turn around and dedicate themselves to helping others. I couldn't forget even if I wanted to, I admitted. The experience changed me too much. And if it's going to be part of me forever, I might as well use it for something good. She smiled. You're going to be excellent at this work. But fair warning, it's going to be harder than you think. Every client will remind you of yourself. Every story will trigger memories. You'll need strong boundaries and excellent self-care. I'm ready, I said. And I was. The next 2 years were transformative. I finished my master's degree while working part-time at the hospital. Started seeing clients at the domestic violence shelter. Mostly women, a few men, all trapped in relationships that were slowly killing them. Every session was emotionally exhausting, listening to stories that echoed my own, watching people struggle with the same shame and confusion I'd felt. The desperate need to believe things would get better coupled with the growing awareness that they wouldn't. But I was good at it, better than I'd expected. My clients trusted me in ways they didn't trust others, because I'd been there. I knew the specific hell of loving someone who was destroying you, the way hope and fear could exist simultaneously, how leaving felt both necessary and impossible. One client, Vera, had been married for 15 years. Her husband controlled everything, the money, the car, her access to family and friends. He'd never hit her. That's what she kept saying. He's never hit me, so it's not really abuse, right? I showed her a list of abusive behaviors: isolation, financial control, constant criticism, monitoring, gaslighting, making you doubt your reality. She checked nearly every box. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know. I thought abuse had to be physical. I thought I was just being too sensitive. You're not too sensitive, I assured her. You're responding normally to abnormal treatment. His behavior is abuse even without bruises. She left him 3 months later, called me from her sister's house, sobbing with relief and terror. I did it. I actually did it. But now I don't know what comes next. Now you build a life on your own terms, I said. It'll be hard. You'll doubt yourself. Some days you'll want to go back. But every day you stay gone is a day you're reclaiming yourself. She moved to another state, started over completely. Last I heard, she'd enrolled in college at 42, studying social work. Another survivor turning pain into purpose. Stories like hers kept me going, reminded me why this work mattered. Every person who escaped was a small victory against the systems that enabled abuse, against the cultural narratives that told victims to stay, to fix it, to try harder, to accept less than they deserved. I started speaking at conferences, sharing my story alongside my professional expertise. At first, talking publicly about Gordon and what he'd done felt vulnerable, exposing. But the response was overwhelming. Other survivors approached me afterward, thanked me for putting words to their experience, for validating what they'd endured. One woman grabbed my hands after a presentation. You just described my marriage exactly. I thought I was the only one. I thought something was wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you, I said firmly. There's something wrong with a culture that teaches us to accept mistreatment as love. She called me 3 months later. She'd left, taken her kids and moved in with family. Said my speech had given her the courage to finally act, to stop making excuses for the inexcusable. Those moments made everything worthwhile. The years of pain, the humiliation, the slow rebuilding. If my suffering could help even one person escape sooner, recognize the signs earlier, believe they deserved better, then then maybe it hadn't been wasted. Cal and I started co-presenting sometimes, a survivor and her ally. We'd talk about the role bystanders play, how staying silent enables abuse, how choosing to intervene, even when it's uncomfortable, can save lives. He'd talk about watching Gordon mistreat me, how he'd told himself it wasn't his business, how he'd gradually realized that neutrality helped the abuser, never the victim, how he finally chose my safety over family peace. His presentations always made me cry, hearing him describe his thought process, his guilt, his determination to do better. It reminded me that I hadn't escaped alone, that good people existed who would stand up when it mattered. 8 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, I published a book, a combination of memoir and psychology. My story interwoven with research and practical guidance for people trying to leave. I called it The Last Thanksgiving, a reference to the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped pretending and started fighting. The book did better than anyone expected, made it onto a few bestseller lists. I did interviews, podcasts, spoke at bookstores and universities. Every event brought me face-to-face with survivors, people who saw themselves in my story, who found hope in my escape. One evening after a bookstore reading, an older woman approached me. She was maybe 70, elegant, poised. She waited until everyone else had left. Then she handed me a copy of my book to sign. I stayed for 42 years, she said quietly. Raised 3 children in a house that looked perfect from the outside and felt like a prison on the inside. I never left. Told myself it was for the kids, for financial security, because that's what good women do. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Don't be sorry. Be proud. You did what I couldn't. You chose yourself. You broke the pattern. Her voice cracked. My daughter is in a similar marriage. She won't listen to me when I tell her to leave, but maybe she'll listen to you. Maybe reading about someone young and strong who escaped will give her courage I never had. I signed her book with a personal message for her daughter, included my email address, told her to have her daughter reach out if she needed support. 2 weeks later, I got an email from the daughter. She'd read the book in one sitting, recognized her own relationship in every chapter. She was ready to leave. Did I have resources? Recommendations? I connected her with counselors in her area, helped her develop a safety plan, checked in regularly as she prepared to escape. She finally left 4 months later, sent me a photo of herself and her kids in their new apartment. We're free, the text said. Thanks to you. Those messages kept me going on hard days, when I felt exhausted by the work, when a client went back to their abuser, when I doubted whether anything I did really mattered. Those messages reminded me that small ripples create big waves, that every person who escapes helps break the cycle. I'd been single for 8 years by then, dated occasionally, but nothing stuck. My therapist said I'd built such a strong, independent life that I was naturally selective, that I wouldn't settle for someone who couldn't match my growth. I wasn't sure if that was true or if I was just too damaged for real intimacy. 8 years after escaping, Gordon and I still flinched sometimes when men raised their voices, still overanalyzed every interaction for signs of manipulation, still carried the scars even though the wounds had healed. Then I met Quincy. He came to one of my workshops, a social worker who specialized in child welfare. He asked thoughtful questions, challenged some of my assumptions respectfully. Afterward, we went for coffee to continue the discussion. He was kind, genuinely kind in a way that felt unfamiliar. He asked about my work with real interest, listened without interrupting, shared his own story of growing up with a father who'd been emotionally abusive to his mother. I watched her take it for 20 years, he said. Told myself I'd never be like him, never treat someone the way he treated her. That awareness made me hyper-vigilant in my own relationships. Maybe too much. My ex-wife said I was exhausting to be with because I was always checking in, always making sure she was okay, always worried I was somehow hurting her without realizing it. We saw each other again, and again. Slow, careful dating. Both of us carrying old wounds. Both of us determined not to recreate old patterns. He respected my boundaries. Never pushed when I pulled back. Gave me space when I needed it. 6 months in, he asked me to be his girlfriend. The label felt simultaneously juvenile and terrifying. I hadn't been someone's girlfriend in over a decade. Hadn't allowed myself to be vulnerable enough to try. Can I think about it? I asked. Not because I don't want to. Because I need to make sure I'm doing this for the right reasons. Not out of loneliness or habit or fear of being alone. He smiled. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I talked to my therapist, to Cal, to Diane, to my mom. Everyone said the same thing. Quincy was good for me. Patient, stable, self-aware enough to recognize his own issues and work on them. Nothing like Gordon, but that was what scared me. Being happy felt dangerous. Like something that could be taken away. Like I'd be foolish to trust it. My therapist called it waiting for the other shoe to drop. A trauma response that expected disaster even when everything was fine. I'm ready to be your girlfriend, I told Quincy 3 weeks later. But I need you to know I'm probably going to be difficult. I'm going to test you without meaning to. I'm going to pull away when I get scared. I'm going to expect you to hurt me because that's what I learned relationships were. He took my hand. And I need you to know I'm going to stay anyway. I'm going to prove that not all men are like your ex-husband. I'm going to be patient when you're difficult. I'm going to give you space when you need it and reassurance when you ask. Because you're worth the effort. I cried. Right there in the coffee shop. Cried because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be valued. To have someone choose me knowing all my broken pieces and wanting me anyway. Our relationship unfolded slowly. He met Cal and Diane. They approved. Cautiously at first, protective of me, but gradually relaxing as Quincy proved himself consistent and genuine. My parents loved him immediately. My dad pulled me aside during their first visit. That's a good man. Nothing like Gordon. Don't let your fear of the past ruin your future. Quincy and I moved in together after a year. That felt huge. Letting someone into my space. The home I'd reclaimed and rebuilt. The sanctuary that represented everything I'd fought for. But he respected it. Never tried to take over or change things without asking. We negotiated everything, from furniture placement to household chores to how we'd handle conflicts. The first time we fought, I waited for him to blow up, to say something cutting, to turn my words against me the way Gordon always had. Instead, Quincy took a breath and said, "I'm feeling defensive right now. Can we take a 20-minute break and come back to this when I'm calmer?" I stared at him. "You're not mad?" "I am mad," he admitted, "but I'm not going to say things I'll regret just because I'm upset. You deserve better than that." 20 minutes later, we talked it through. No yelling, no personal attacks, no keeping score. Just two adults working through a disagreement. It was revolutionary. The idea that conflict didn't have to be destructive, that you could be angry with someone and still treat them with respect. We'd been together 3 years when Quincy proposed. Nothing fancy, just us on a hiking trail we loved. He'd packed a picnic, and at the summit, with the whole valley spread below us, he pulled out a ring. "I don't need you to say yes right now," he said. "I know you have complicated feelings about marriage, about what it represents, but I want you to know I'm committed to you, to us, to building a life that's nothing like what you escaped. If marriage is too much, we don't have to, but I wanted to offer it, to show you that the institution itself isn't the problem. The person is." I looked at the ring. Simple, beautiful. Nothing like the ostentatious diamond Gordon had given me. This ring represented something completely different. A partnership built on respect. A relationship where I could be fully myself. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I want to marry you." His face split into the biggest smile. "Really? You're sure?" "I'm sure. You've shown me for 3 years that you're not him, that relationships can be safe and healthy and built on genuine love. I trust you. I trust us." We got married 6 months later, small ceremony, just family and close friends. Cal officiated. During the vows, I looked at Quincy and saw my future. Not perfect. Not without challenges, but honest. Safe. Built on a foundation of mutual respect and care. When Cal pronounced us married, I felt something shift, a final letting go of the past. Gordon no longer had power over me, not even in memory. I'd built something new, something better, something that was entirely mine. At the reception, my mom squeezed my hand. "You look happy. Really, genuinely happy. Not the performed happiness you had with Gordon. This is real." She was right. I was happy. Content in a way I'd never been before. Not because my life was perfect, but because it was authentically mine. Every choice, every relationship, every day. All of it built on truth instead of pretense. Years passed. Good years. Quincy and I bought a house together. Adopted 2 dogs. Built careers we loved. Supported each other through challenges and celebrated victories together. I kept working with survivors. Kept writing. Kept speaking. Kept using my past to create positive change. Gordon faded to a distant memory. Someone I used to know. A chapter that was closed and no longer relevant to who I'd become. I'd heard through Cal that Gordon had gone through 2 more marriages, that he'd never really changed, that the patterns persisted with different victims. Part of me felt sad about that. Sad for the women who'd fallen for his charm, who were experiencing what I'd experienced, who maybe didn't have someone like Cal to help them escape. But I couldn't save everyone. Could only share my story and hope it helped people recognize the signs sooner. I was 42 when I got a message through my website, from Gordon. After 14 years of silence, he'd tracked me down. The message was brief. "I've been sober for 2 years. In therapy for 3. Doing the work to understand what I did to you and others. Not asking for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I finally see it. Finally understand. You deserved so much better." I showed the message to Quincy. "What do you think? Should I respond?" He read it carefully. "Do you want to?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted closure. Wanted to hear Gordon admit what he'd done. But another part knew I didn't need his admission. I'd found closure on my own. Built a life so full and rich that his acknowledgement was irrelevant. "I don't think so," I said finally. "I'm glad he's getting help. Glad he's aware of his behavior. But I don't need anything from him anymore." Quincy nodded. "Then don't respond. You don't owe him anything. Not even acknowledgement." So I didn't. Deleted the message and moved on. Because that's what healing looks like. Not needing your abuser's validation. Not waiting for an apology to give yourself permission to move forward. Just choosing peace and building a life that reflects your worth. 10 years into my second marriage, Cal called with unexpected news. Mom and Dad want to have dinner. With all of us. They say they've been in therapy. That they understand now what they enabled. They want to apologize. I didn't believe it. Gordon's parents had never shown an ounce of self-awareness. Never acknowledged their role in perpetuating abuse. Why would they change now? "What do you think?" Cal asked. "Worth hearing them out?" I considered. After 15 years of silence, they suddenly wanted reconciliation? It felt suspicious. Manipulative. But Cal sounded hopeful. Like maybe, finally, they'd evolved. "I'll go if you and Diane go," I said. "But I'm not doing this alone, and I reserve the right to walk out at any time." The dinner was tense. Gordon's parents looked older. Tired. His father, once so imposing and aggressive, seemed diminished. His mother, always perfect and poised, looked worn. They apologized, said all the right words, acknowledged enabling Gordon's behavior, admitted pushing blame onto me when I'd been the victim, claimed they'd been attending family therapy, learning about abusive dynamics. Understanding their complicity, I listened, nodded politely, but I didn't forgive. Forgiveness isn't mandatory. Sometimes the hurt runs too deep. Sometimes people wait too long to make amends. Sometimes you've moved on so completely that their apology is just noise. Thank you for saying that, I said when they finished. I appreciate the acknowledgement, but I need you to understand something. The time for this conversation was 15 years ago, when I needed support, when I was being destroyed by your son and you chose to blame me. Now I don't need anything from you. Gordon's mother's eyes filled with tears. We know we failed you, failed our other children. We're just hoping maybe someday you could forgive us. Maybe, I said, but not today. Today I'm just here to support Cal and Diane, to show up for the people who showed up for me. You weren't those people. We left shortly after. Cal was quiet in the car. You were harsh? No, I was honest. They don't get to feel better just because they finally apologized. They don't get to clear their conscience and move on. Some damage is permanent. He nodded slowly. I think I needed to hear that. I was feeling guilty for still being angry at them. Don't, I said. Your anger is valid. You don't owe them forgiveness just because they've decided they want it. Diane texted later. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. They've been pressuring me to reconcile, acting like enough time has passed, like we should all just forget and move on. I needed to hear someone say no. That's okay too. Life continued, full and rich and complicated. I kept working, kept writing, kept helping survivors find their way out of darkness. Quincy and I celebrated our 10th anniversary, a decade of healthy love, of mutual respect, of choosing each other every day. On our anniversary, he gave me a framed photo. It was from that Thanksgiving dinner 15 years ago. Cal had taken it right after the truth came out. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, Cal beside me, both of us looking determined and strong. You're keeping that moment? I asked. He smiled. That's the moment you chose yourself, the moment you stopped accepting less than you deserved. I never want you to forget how brave you were. I hugged him tight, grateful for this man who understood, who celebrated my strength instead of feeling threatened by it, who loved me not despite my past, but because of how I'd overcome it. That night, I pulled out my old journals, the ones I'd kept during the marriage to Gordon, during the escape, during the healing. I read through them, visiting the woman I used to be. She felt like a stranger, someone I'd known long ago but barely recognized now. The fear in those pages, the confusion, the desperate hope that things would improve, the slow realization that they wouldn't, the moment of decision, the aftermath, all of it documented in my own handwriting. I'd survived. More than survived. I'd thrived, built a career helping others, written a book, found real love, created a life that teenage me would have been proud of. Not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. Authentically, courageously mine. Quincy found me reading in bed. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just remembering. Grateful. He kissed my forehead. Me too. Grateful you're here. Grateful you chose to keep going. Grateful you let me be part of your story. That's the thing about surviving. About escaping. About rebuilding. You don't just save yourself. You create ripples. Impact people you'll never meet. Change narratives. Break cycles. Prove that leaving is possible. That healing is real. That life after abuse can be beautiful. My story started with a man who thought hurting me meant nothing, who believed there would be no consequences, who forgot that truth eventually surfaces. But my story didn't end there. It ended with me, strong, whole, surrounded by love, using my pain to help others. And that ending? That was worth everything it took to get here.